Ampere Analysis research reveals the widening price gap between SVOD services, ad-free and ad-supported tiers, but is there a limit? Meanwhile, more evidence of YouTube's dominance. Listen on.
Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and that was Colin Dixon from End Screen Media. As usual, right, Colin? Here we are again. It's already the end of the summer. How about that?
It is the end of the summer, and we have a rare treat tonight. We're recording on Thursday. There's a lunar eclipse, and it is not really super late. So I will be stepping outside around about 8 p.m. to watch the lunar eclipse from here in California. Will you do the same in Boston?
I will, and actually, you probably know this, that we have what's called a full sturgeon moon right now. And that is the fullest moon in the month of August. And I was out last night and took some great pictures and did a little Googling on it. Apparently, I was told by one of our listeners about the full sturgeon moon. And it's an interesting story to learn about. It's how the indigenous people knew that that was at the time of the month that they were going to catch the biggest sturgeons. And if you've never seen a sturgeon, take a look at that also. You certainly don't want to meet one of those one-on-one anytime soon.
They are a big, angry fish. There's no question about that.
Prehistoric angry fish. We don't want to mix it up with them. Anyway, let's mix it up on our two favorite topics. We just keep talking about them again and again. SVOD and YouTube. You've got SVOD.
I do have SVOD, and interesting research this week from Ampere Analysis. They basically took a look at the price increases in the major services, and as we know, as we've talked about on the podcast, and as everybody is acutely aware, there's been a lot of extremely high price increases in those SVOD services over the last few years. Well, according to Ampere's latest analysis, which was released on Monday, the providers have actually modified or moderated their price increases. Ampere says that the average price increase fell from 24% in the 2023-2024 timeframe to 14% between 2025 and 2026. And in fact, they say the average increase declined from $1.67 to $1.54 over that period. And the interesting thing is the actual increases in ad tier versus no ad tier remains much larger. The difference there is much larger. The average increase of ad-free viewing was $1.62 over the past 3 years, compared with $1.21 for the ad-supported plans. So that's good news, and I think that's probably a response to the way their subscribers are feeling. Well, I think people are feeling pretty frustrated and pinched by these continual increases. The good news here is, well, I suppose it's sort of good news, bad news. The biggest increases were not experienced in North America. The biggest increases were in Western Europe, where they saw a nearly $2 increase. North America, of course, was $1.60-ish increase in that period. So yeah, we're not feeling the brunt of this. Other regions are. But here's the thing. I ran back to my trusty spreadsheet, Will, to sort of look at what I see going on. And I do see the moderation that Ampere is talking about, but it is not uniform. And there's one outlier that jumps out to me, at least, and that is Peacock. Peacock has just increased $1 increase in its ad-free tier. And I'm not talking about the select tier here, because the select tier really eliminates all of the sports and all of the really interesting stuff that I think people would want. So I'm really only talking about their middle tier. They added $1 to that to take it to $12.99, and they added $3 to the ad-free viewing tier to take it to $19.99. That basically makes Peacock more expensive than Netflix these days. Netflix entry-level tier is $8.99, and $19.99 for their ad-free tier. And as I say, the Peacock Premium is $12.99 and $19.99.
And of course, we can draw a straight line from that gigantic NBA deal that Peacock signed to this rate increase, right? Because sports needs to be paid for in one way or the other.
You got that right, Will. I'm paying extra to cover that cost, even though I don't care about NBA. And talking about paying a penalty, what that means is that this ad-free viewing penalty continues to rise. It is now $7 at Peacock. It is $11 at Netflix, which is the leader, and $7 at Disney Plus, $5 at Paramount Plus, and $7.50 at HBO Max. So clearly what the service providers are trying to do here is to push people to watch ads. They want those people that are sort of on the bubble and are struggling to afford ad-free viewing. They're trying to push them to start watching ads. It's good to know that they're moderating their price increases, but that's certainly not uniform across the industry.
Yeah, I thought this research was really interesting. And just to pick up on a few of the thoughts that you just shared, of course, we know from the antenna data that we've been tracking closely that the majority of the growth in SVOD in the past probably 2 years, maybe even more, has been with the ad-supported tiers. So those lower-priced tiers are what's really driving the SVOD, both gross ads and net ads. So important point to note. To your point about the gap, I think the research said, if I understood it correctly, that the gap between ad-free and ad-supported has grown from $4.53, that was the average gap, to $5.35 over the past couple of years. So that $4.53 was between August of 2023 and July of 2024. The $5.35 gap was between August 25 and July 26. So that's basically an 18.1% increase in the gap over those couple of years. Specifically for Netflix, back in August 23, the gap between ad-free and ad-supported was $8.50. And then, as you just mentioned, it's now $11. So that's an increase of 29.4%. So Netflix has been more aggressive, and we've talked about this in the past, more aggressive than other SVOD services in driving a bigger gap between the two services. But earlier you said you used the term ad-free viewing penalty, and I'm just going to pick up on that. We've kind of had this discussion a bit in the past. I'm going to reframe what you said, Colin. I don't think it's so much as an ad-free viewing penalty as it is the SVOD services really testing how important it is to certain subscribers to have an ad-free experience. They, nobody really knows. I mean, all we know about fundamentally the media business is that consumers pay either with their time or with their money, or in some cases both, like we saw in the cable TV world, and now we're seeing with these ad-free tiers, ad-supported tiers, where they're paying both with money and also partly with their time to watch ads. But the question of where is the point of optimization in pricing of both these tiers is very much a work in progress. And I would argue that rather than them imposing a penalty, if you will, on the ad-free viewing, all these SVODs are trying to figure out, well, okay, if we push up the ad-free tier by, let's say $3, like Peacock is doing, as you mentioned, versus pushing up the ad-supported tier by $1, creating a bigger gap. How committed are these ad-free viewers to staying ad-free? And to the extent that they're really committed, well, then, okay, great. Let them keep paying more and more and more for an ad-free experience. Meantime, the lower-priced ad-supported tier looks better and better for the budget conscious, as you mentioned before. And it also, I think, very importantly, gives the SVOD service something to offer people who are looking to drop, who finally say, cry uncle, that they don't want to keep paying ever more for an ad-free experience. Gives them a downgrade opportunity, therefore a way to mitigate churn, increase retention. because, of course, by comparison, the bigger that gap between those two services gets, the more attractive that lower priced service looks. So, there's a psychological benefit, I think, when, let's say Netflix is trying to save an ad-free subscriber from dropping entirely. There's a nice psychological benefit for them to present an offer that's now $11 cheaper, increases likelihood of retention. So I think these companies are all, I think it's really savvy by all of them. We've talked about Netflix as being an incredibly data-driven company in the past. No doubt they are adhering very closely to what the data is telling them on both the ad-free and the ad-supported tiers. And the fact that they now have the biggest gap in the market, far above the average gap for the other services, I think says something about what the other services are going to do, and also how Netflix continues to optimize its business as it always has.
So, yeah, I mean, all of that is certainly true, Will. It's hard to argue with all of that. I will say, though, that the reason I think it is a penalty in many cases is Netflix freely admits that they're not able to make up the difference yet with ads. So what that means is that I am paying more when you take into account, how much I'm paying. I am paying more to watch Netflix than somebody that's watching ads is paying, where, obviously they're paying with time and with money. That to me sounds like a penalty, that I'm being penalized to watch something that other people are being able to watch. Now, of course, I can always downgrade, but one of the values that Netflix has always brought is a, quote, premium viewing experience where I don't have to watch ads. So if they continue to push up that ad-free premium, they almost certainly, for me, they probably won't gain an ad viewer. They'll lose a subscriber. I'll probably just go elsewhere.
The challenge, of course, for Peacock, when we talk about retention and downgrading and everything that you're speaking of, is that not everybody's a basketball fan. And so if you're not a basketball fan, these $3 month increases are going to prompt a lot of people to question what the value is of Peacock and figure out what they want to do accordingly.
Right. And in my case, I will downgrade my Peacock subscription. I'm on the annual plan. I'll downgrade when my Peacock subscription is up. And the primary reason there just isn't enough premium scripted content to be worth $20 a month. There just isn't enough. There's one or two shows that I watch on Peacock. I primarily use it for Premier League. So I might just as well downgrade to the ad plan, watch my Premier League, and in fact I might go monthly, and I'll just cancel at the end of the season and resubscribe 4 months later when the season starts up again. So this will, for Peacock, will be a net loss from me. They'll be making less money from me. Quite a bit less money. So, that's fair enough. If that's their pricing policy, great. I, as a consumer, will optimize my use of Peacock as well.
So far be it from me to get in the middle of the decision-making process in the Dixon household. But when you unilaterally declared that you're going to drop Netflix, that would assume that there's no other participant in the decision-making process in the Dixon household.
This is also true, and I may well be speaking out of turn.
I was going to gently say you may be overestimating, but far be it from me. And don't think Netflix doesn't know that exactly.
Funnily enough, that brings us to the second topic, because my spouse spends a lot of time watching YouTube on television. That's her, I think, favorite service. Both of us spend a lot of time watching YouTube. And we have some new data which shows it's making great progress there. But I think you have a little insight into another very successful creator from YouTube before we jump into the YouTube stuff, right?
Right. Well, we want to talk about the new data from a test that speaks to the first point you were making about how omnipresent YouTube has become for us. But can't not mention news this week that the movie Obsession, which we've talked about earlier this summer, the phenomenon that it was, obsession and back rooms. Obsession crossed $500 million at the box office globally. Wow. $500 million. I have not calculated what the ROI is for the distributors. Who knows what it is for the creator himself, but that's seismic. And I think, we've talked about this before, but no question, all over Hollywood studios, there's a foraging of YouTube right now for the next massive success. Who knows whether that 500 million will ever be replicated. It's such an incredible outlier, but worth noting. What we want to talk about, though, first up was new data from the research firm Attest. This is their 2026 Attention Economy report, showing that 90% of Americans, 90% access YouTube on a typical weekday versus 79% for streaming services and 73% for live TV. YouTube has almost pulled even with streaming on time spent. So YouTube is now an hour 46 minutes. Streaming is an hour 49 minutes. Again, live TV lags, hour and 31 minutes. Now, this research is across both the UK and the US, about 1,000 participants. Attest said that Americans spend an average of 3 hours, 54 minutes a day with YouTube, TikTok, and social video, which beats out the 3 hours, 20 minutes that they spend with streaming services. So, and no surprise, numbers are even more skewed for Gen Z watchers. So, again, more evidence. We keep repeating ourselves to some extent here on Inside the Stream, but just more evidence of how YouTube continues to make inroads on the TV at the expense of both streaming services and live TV, broadcast TV. And again, the fact that YouTube keeps growing this time just continues to show the rise of, again, the so-called creator economy.
Indeed, and we've certainly seen that here in the US with the continued growth of YouTube's share of TV time, overall TV time as measured by the gauge. And it certainly reflects what we're seeing in our household, Will, and talking about the time spent with YouTube. This is really forcing the premium providers to work more with it because, if they can't squeeze YouTube and slow its growth, then they have to be part of it. And so what we see is more and more premium users working hand in glove with YouTube. Of course, we talked about the BBC, and the BBC's actually making originals there. But even this week, I noticed that Warner Brothers has just launched a live channel with Looney Tunes cartoons. I think they have a Tom and Jerry channel, a live channel that they've launched that you can tune in. And there's a ton of Warner Brothers Looney Tunes content available on YouTube. So, this really emphasizes that this is one of those services that it seems like the premium providers of TV content are powerless to restrain its growth. And so they're doing the only other thing that they can, and that is to be part of it. So, I think we're probably going to continue to see YouTube to grow.
Yeah, and we were also talking before we started recording, Colin, we both noticed that YouTube's head of EMEA was at the Edinburgh TV Festival this week talking about another golden age of TV happening in the UK, and that TV isn't the enemy and should be looked at positively. He also, I think, made a financial pledge, did he not? Financial pledge to the
He did, yeah. £3 million or $4 million, around $4 million, to help retrain industry professionals displaced in the switch to streaming. So I suppose, that's not a lot, but it is, I guess, a sort of token to the industry in the UK. But interesting, there were a couple of things. I think things are hotting up a little bit between Netflix and YouTube, Will. I know in that article that we were reading, I think it was on Variety, they happened to mention that Ted Sarandis has been over in Brussels talking with European regulators and basically saying, wait a minute, YouTube is taking time from everybody now. It's taking time from premium TV providers. It's taking time for Netflix and all the others. Shouldn't it be regulated in the same way that Netflix is? And look, Netflix is facing some pretty stringent requirements. They have to have a certain amount of stuff from each region that they're active in. And in some cases, they're actually being taxed on revenue that they make in that region. And they're also having to prove that they're investing in TV producers in that region. And so Ted Sarandos is making the point that, well, shouldn't you be holding YouTube to the same standard? So that's one thing. But there was something else as well this week about this relationship with Netflix and YouTube maybe souring.
Yeah, well, I don't know about souring, but certainly the competition between them heating up, which is we observed in both Bloomberg and elsewhere, Ankler, that YouTube is now apparently offering certain creators big money, millions of dollars, to keep their content exclusive within a certain upfront window, rather than releasing it into other platforms, namely Netflix, of course, but even Tubi and others that are starting to kind of nibble around the edges for some of this top creator content. So YouTube seems like it's putting kind of its money where its mouth is, if you will,
yep.
For creators, wanting them to recognizing the value of those creators and keeping them on the platform. And I would just also say, we talk a lot about YouTube on this podcast. One thing that is so essential to understand about YouTube right from day one is that they say and they act as a creator-centric company. They are all about the creator, and that shows through in so many different moves that they're making. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about how they changed the metrics for how creators in the YouTube Partner Program would be compensated. And we observed then that that was going to probably not be a great thing for longer tail creators, better for those with the biggest audiences. But they came right back, not last week, but the week prior. Last week we were doing the interview, of course, with Brendan Brady from Antenna, so we didn't get to touch on this. But even as they changed the measurement to tighten things up a little bit, they also eased it by saying that views would be counted instantly, just as for creators, just as TikTok and others do. So that sort of opens the spigot a little further, although they did put a caveat on that compensation would only be on what they call engaged watch hours. And it was not clear. It's not clear exactly how long one has to watch a video in order for it to be qualifying as a watch hour. But it'll certainly not be instant, but it'll be something less than 30 seconds. So somewhere in that window. So that was worth noting also, as far as creator monetization. Also, I think just maybe one last thing to mention here, again, just continuing to underscore how important creator monetization is. News today that creators can now tag Amazon products within their videos, and as long as they're part of the Amazon Influencer Program or the Amazon Associates Program, of course, in the YPP, that they will earn a share, some sort of commission or affiliate revenue on those sales of product of whatever they drive on Amazon. So again, another really creator-friendly thing that YouTube is doing. And, just as we talk about Netflix being a data-centric company, no doubt YouTube is every bit as well. But the thing that YouTube has that Netflix does not is that creator-centric orientation and that incredible loyalty that they engender, doing everything they can to try to help creators make money. And that's the name of the game for anybody who's producing content is, I'm going to put my creative energy and my time and effort, sweat, blood, sweat, tears, right, into my content. I just want to make a living at it, right? And that's what YouTube allows.
You bet. And I think it's good and proper that they should be able to create links. I see that in plenty of my written stuff, in the written stuff that I see. And so I think it's only fair that they should also be able to benefit when they recommend a product. Hopefully they will maintain their integrity as they're doing it well, and they'll only recommend products that they actually really like. But of course, there's nothing to stop them from lying through their teeth, I suppose. But as we know, integrity is one of the things that that your viewers really look for on YouTube. So that would be a risky path to follow for anybody. But yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Right. And speaking of risk, we won't even get into the subject of AI slop finding its way onto YouTube with Amazon tags and affiliate revenue getting siphoned off to some, whatever offshore ghost entity. But that's why YouTube invests all that it does in trying to keep the site as clean as it can. Not an easy task, and certainly some AI stuff slips through. But it's a new era. We're not going to talk about that today, but it is a new era on that content creation side as well with AI. But I think that may be all we have for today, unless any final thoughts on your end.
No, I think we've covered a whole bunch of topics, Will. So I think we have done enough for today.
All right. Well, enjoy the full sturgeon moon / eclipse tonight, everybody.
I certainly will, and I hope everybody will.
Don't mix it up with a sturgeon, whatever you do.
Yeah.
And we will see you again, everybody, next week. Thanks for listening in. Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.